Well, Chris Mannix, covering the NBA for 20 years, works with me at The Volume, great writer, and now spending a lot of time in Los Angeles. The Dame story is interesting. You have so many tentacles on this. First of all, you cover boxing. Dame is probably the NBA's biggest boxing fan, so you have a great relationship with Dame. I'm hearing a lot of speculation that it's Miami or Dame will be furious. Let's start with that. Do you believe that to be true?
I believe Miami is his top choice, and if he has any influence to wield over this decision, he's going to push for a deal to Miami. I'm not so sure about the Miami or bust argument. I don't believe that Damian Lillard, if he's traded to Philadelphia or Brooklyn or some other destination, is not going to report. Or if he's going to
Milwaukee?
No, I think wherever it is, I think he's going to report, and I think he'd play to the best of his abilities because that's the cloth that Damian Lillard is cut out of. So I don't think the team that acquires him, whoever that may be, is going to have to worry about Damian Lillard throwing a fit when he gets here, pulling, for lack of a better phrase, a James Harden and not playing to the best of his abilities when he's there.
The other thing is, the best GMs, Danny Ainge is one of the best GMs in this league. He'll tear something down to the studs. Mm-hmm. Pat Riley, a deal maker. I don't buy into this. You pay Dame $300 million, and you have to send him where he's happy. That's not Danny Ainge's history.
No, of course not. And this is where I fundamentally disagree with our friend Nick Wright on stars always get their way. Let's use Danny as an example. I don't know that Brooklyn was Paul Pierce's desired destination if he could go anywhere in the market. It was probably go back to Los Angeles and play for the Lakers or the Clippers. But the Nets were willing to come to the table with the best deal. Kevin Garnett was ultimately convinced, and the Celtics were able to reshape their franchise by sending the players where Danny Ainge wanted to send them. Fast forward to last season when Danny decides that the Jazz had plateaued. He said, we're going to trade Donovan Mitchell. We're going to trade Rudy Gobert. Everyone knows where Donovan Mitchell wanted to go. He wanted to be a Knick. He grew up in that area. He wanted to play for the Knicks. The Knicks made an offer. It wasn't the best one. Danny traded Donovan to Cleveland, got Lauri Markkanen, a whole bunch of draft picks in exchange. I don't know Rudy Gobert that well. I'm going to guess that Minnesota was not at the top of his wish list when he was going to be traded, but the Timberwolves stepped up and offered just a boatload of draft picks, and Danny took that deal. If you are a GM with a backbone, you deal the player wherever he's going to go. And more often than not, players show up, they play. Not everyone's going to pull a Harden and try to get out of there. They'll show up, they'll play. If for their own self-interest, they will play at the highest of levels.
Yeah, it's pretty legendary that Pat Riley and Danny Ainge, this has been going on decades, do not get along. So if Miami is the Dame destination of note, will Utah get involved just to drive up the price?
There's definitely some spice to the Danny-Pat Riley relationship, which goes back to the 80s. This is quite literally Celtics, decades Lakers, long. Yeah. And they've had their public battles as top executives in Boston and Miami. I think it could be a motivating factor for Danny Ainge to keep Damian Lillard away from Miami. But, this Utah stuff, it just doesn't line up with the timelines. The Jazz are a very good team with a elite head coach, I think, in Will Hardy, but they're probably 2 or 3 years away with the talent they have.
Young kids
who are, Walker Kessler, excellent. Lauri Markkanen, excellent. The young guys they have there are fine. The draft picks they're going to be, taking with those spots are going to be good, are probably going to be good. But, Damian Lillard, you're looking probably at a 2 to 3 year window where he's able to play like Damian Lillard,
That's
all
right.
NBA guard. And I don't see the Jazz with him contending. You put Damian Lillard on the Jazz, Colin, next year. Are they a playoff team? Absolutely. But are they beating Denver? Are they beating Memphis? Are they beating the Lakers in the first round? Based on, put it on paper, I don't see that happening.
So the Celtics well. I think being a number 2 is hard. Because a number 2 was a high school All-American, was an AAU star. If he went to college, he was dominant. And for the first time in his life, he goes to the NBA. Bro, you don't get the shots at the end of the games. So there's a certain temperament required. Jaylen Brown is a great 2. Smart, gotten better every year. But when I read a story this morning, Brian Windhauer said the Celtics, deal with Jaylen's very fragile. I'm like, time out, bro. You got to make 60 large. You never get blamed in Boston. They lose, it's Tatum or the coach. That's just the way it works in the league. The coach or the star gets blamed. They got rid of Marcus Smart. You've been in 105 playoff games. That's 3 times as many as Dame. It is a tremendous organization. You're popular and wildly supported. Great training staff. Great ownership. And I'm like, I like Jaylen Brown a lot. But fragile, he may have the best. I think he does have the best number 2 gig, the best Robin in the league. Doesn't he?
I think you're probably right there. You just look at the outcome of the last 2 postseasons and where the blame was spread. In the finals last year, it was Jayson Tatum who came up short. Jayson Tatum
he was hurt.
Took the lion's share of the
Heat. He still got whacked.
He did. And look, Jaylen Brown played really well in that finals. If the Celtics had found a way to win it, he might have been the finals MVP. This season, even though Jaylen Brown struggled mightily in Game 7, a lot of it was Jayson Tatum, and more of it was Joe Mazzulla. Right. I mean, the attention was all on the rookie head coach, and was he really the right guy for the job? Could he handle it? All those things. So Jaylen Brown kind of skated there. I think 2 things to remember with Jaylen Brown. One is, deep down, I think Jaylen Brown believes he can be a number 1 on a championship team.
Well, his numbers...
They suggest that. He has been improving.
Yeah,
the gap is closed, Colin, between Tatum and Brown. There's still a gap, but I think the gap is closed over the last couple of years between Tatum and Brown.
I think Tatum's a more natural basketball player. Brown is physically good and more confident. He's a more willing alpha.
Yeah, I think that's true. But being second team All-NBA, I mean, that's something. That tells you that he's continuing to grow. And the other part of Jaylen's relationship with Boston is that ever since his draft night, his literal draft night, there's been a part of him that's felt unwanted in that city. I mean, he was booed. His selection was booed at the Garden on draft night by Boston fans that wanted the team to draft Chris Dunn. Remember, Chris Dunn was the superstar out of Providence, right down the street. They loved him.
I thought he was going to be better, too.
See, Celtics draft Jaylen Brown. I remember vividly the fans at the Garden booing that selection on draft night. It seems like every year since then, every offseason, we've talked about Jaylen Brown being traded. We've talked about him being traded for Anthony Davis for multiple years. We've talked about him for Kawhi Leonard. And now, more recently, we've talked about him for Kevin Durant. We're not there yet on Damian Lillard. It's kind of being whispered a little bit around some circles.
Yeah.
But that could be coming in the next couple of days. So Jaylen Brown, I know, from talking to people around him, like, it's been a frustrating few years to see where he sees himself improving. He sees the team rising to a finals level, and he's still hearing himself in trade rumors every single offseason.
So as somebody who's lived on the Northeast for a majority of your life, but now because of your relationship and boxing, you now spend time in Los Angeles. And it's interesting, as a West Coast guy, when I moved to Connecticut, I really appreciated it, still miss it greatly. The people, the history, the traditions, the architecture. It was like, I've told people before, it was the best 10 years of my life. It was just, I got right into the belly of Yankee Red Sox. Mm-hmm. The Nantuckets, the Rhode Islands. Like, my life, it was like an encyclopedia, and I lived in it. Now you're out west. And the Lakers have a lot of titles, but for most of the last 9 years, the COVID year, the bubble year feels like it kind of counts and kind of doesn't. They've been a little messy. So when Laker fans say, we won the offseason, how are they viewed? East over. How do you look at the Lakers, their weekend, and what they've become in 10 years? Because they do have a title.
Mm-hmm. I think they had an excellent offseason, in part because they didn't do anything transformative. I think, look, you go back to the weeks and months after they won the championship. Remember, there was that short offseason between the 2020 bubble ending and the start of the 2021 season. They began a progressive deconstruction of a championship roster. That made no sense, right? They allowed some of the free agents to step away in that first year, Dwight Howard, what have you, and then Alex Caruso leaves the next year. 2 years after they won a title, they were a completely different team. They were star hunting. They were doing things antithetical to way the modern NBA
weird.
operates.
Yeah.
Since late January, they have operated like a functional NBA team. They have, look, Rob Pelinka, to his credit, made some mistakes early on, but he corrected them, and he has put together a team that makes sense around LeBron James and Anthony Davis. Rui Hachimura makes sense. Whatever you think of Austin Reeves makes sense. And the guys they signed this offseason, Gabe Vincent, proven winner, can make shots. Taurean Prince, terrific 3-and-D guy. Like, they have built out a sturdy, reliable, deep roster around LeBron and Anthony Davis. None of that may matter when it comes to next season. If LeBron starts to look all of his 39 years, which he will be in December, if Anthony Davis breaks down again during this next season, if that happens, all bets are off. But this team after the All-Star break was 16-7. They went to the Western Conference Finals. Yeah, they got broomed, but they went to the Western Conference Finals. So that's not a team you needed to substantially change. That's a team you needed to nibble around the fringes with, and that's exactly what they did. I think if LeBron and AD come back as the same players they were this past season, you have to make the Lakers at least co-favorites in the Western Conference. You have to consider them one of the top 2 or 3 teams to come out of the West.
So I want to ask you sort of a macro topic. Shohei Ohtani had a remarkable weekend. In the American sports culture, specialization is big. That's where the money is. Mm. But what I am seeing with European basketball players is they come in not specialists, multifaceted. Jokic can do everything. Giannis, though limited on the perimeter initially, has gotten better at that. Luka, highly developed early offensive game. Is that our European players are coming in not specialists, multiple layers. The league feels like it's getting bigger to me. So when the Warriors don't get bigger, I'm like, oh, the window closed. That kind of feels like it. It feels like the league's getting more global, more Europe, back to bigs, but not back to the basket bigs, facing the ball, facing the basket, dribbling. Now, in my lifetime, I grew up with Bob Lanier and Kareem. And then we went to great wings, MJ, Kobe. Then we went to small ball and three-point shooting. Am I overstating it when I feel like we're getting very European with massive bodies who we'd view as centers who do everything well? And that's what the league is becoming. It's getting bigger, and small dynamic players do not have the value.
I don't know if they... You say it's getting bigger, like Jokic is the obvious example. Who's the other example?
Well, the Celtics added size. Denver's getting bigger. Phoenix kept 8.
The Celtics added size, but I'm not convinced they're better. I mean, they added Porzingis because they needed to add a Porzingis. I don't know if right now, as we speak, they're a better team than they were last year. Look, Jokic he's not an anomaly, but I don't know if he signals a fundamental change in the NBA landscape. I don't know that.
I think Giannis and Jokic are the 2 best players in the league.
Giannis, Jokic, Embiid, you could certainly argue international player as well.
Last 5 MVPs are all foreign-born.
No question. Look, there has definitely been a trend where size has mattered once again. You're 100% right. We did go through a 10 or a 15-year period where guys used to be described as tweeners all of a sudden became uber popular. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when, like, George Lynch, like, what do you do with George Lynch on Philadelphia when he was this tweener? Nobody liked tweeners. You had to play a specific position. Nowadays, if you're a tweener, you're great. You can play 3 or 4 spots.
6'7" guys
we
never
love you.
had more value.
But never in their lifetime. Taurean Prince, we just talked about him, incredibly valuable guy. Does that mean that the way the game is going to be played is changing? I don't know. I don't think Nikola Jokic has changed the way the game is played. Look, Jokic is a perimeter player. He can do a lot of things. He can do things that guards can do, but the game is still built entirely around the three-point shot. The three-point numbers continue to go up. You're still going to invest in players like the Warriors have, Steph, Clay, players like that can make threes. I don't know. I think both can be true. We're seeing a trend where big men are starting to come back en vogue, but I think the current trend of the NBA being a three-point shooting league is only going to grow. I mean, we talked about Boston a second ago. If the Celtics took 90%, if 90% of their shots were threes, Joe Mazzulla would be the happiest guy in the world at the end of games. Teams are going to continue to hunt the three-point shot, and I don't think the evolution back to a big dominant game is going to change that.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.